This exercise is called flexion abdominals position. What you're going to need is a wall, and the box in this setup, for the purposes of this video, is set up to be my imaginary wall. And that's why I've got a support just behind the big box, so that when I put pressure with my feet to the wall, the box doesn't topple over. You're also going to need a cushion. If you don't have a cushion, a block will do, and a foam pad or a thin cushion for the base of your head. For flexion abdominals position, you're going to be lying down on your back with your feet to the wall and your knees really generously bent in a deep hip flexion, which means knees considerably over the line of your belly. And this exercise, whilst it's predominantly the use of your lower body, will reposition your pelvis. For many of you, it will also have an activating feeling in the lower legs, particularly those with any foot and ankle dysfunction. And in repositioning and activating the lower part of your body, it will significantly realign the trunk of your body, meaning your spine, your shoulders, your neck, and your head. So for flexion abdominals position, the main job that we're trying to do is re-educate our hip flexors. So what you're going to do is you're going to come to lie down on your back with your feet and knees hip distance apart to start with. And then what you've got to figure out for yourself is the distance that you can be to the wall with your bum, but in a way that your knees are over the line of your stomach, but without your pelvis lifting up like so. I'll just move this cushion out of the way. Your pelvis is supposed to be completely grounded. So if you find that your ability to flex, which is really bend here into the hip, is limited, what will happen is you will feel like you're squashed because you haven't got enough space between the part where your feet meet the wall and your hips to be able to keep your sacrum grounded, in which case you're going to have to move a little bit away from the wall. If you've got to move away from the wall, don't be surprised if you've got to compromise on the amount that your knees can bend, but start first as a priority with your whole sacrum, lower back, your spine, your shoulders down on the floor. Then mark out how much you can bend your knees and keep them over the line of your rib cage. I'm using a block or a foam pad under my head so that the rib cage and the top of my pubic bone can stay in the same plane and I'm not popping my rib cage. Now, for the position of your pelvis, the number one question I get asked is, am I supposed to tuck my pelvis or am I supposed to release my pelvis, which means kind of letting the pubic bone drop towards the floor. Okay, so I'm going to highlight those two positions here. If you were to tuck your tailbone, you would kind of have to do this. And even just by doing it, it's going to feel very odd because you feel like you're pushing yourself away from the wall. So that's not what we're looking for. What we are looking for is with a good sort of command of your feet to the wall, you're simply allowing your pelvis to release. But you're going to know, by virtue of the ground holding your pelvis, the maximum capacity to which your pelvis can drop. It won't go more than it ought to, okay? Then once you're there, you're gently going to find the sort of tripod of your sort of both your feet, your big toes, pinky toes, and your heels. And you're gently, with about 1 to 2, 3, 4% of effort, push your feet into the wall. Then you're going to grab your cushion, place it very gently just between your knees, not between the thighs. Really important that you place it between the inside of your knees. Then what you're going to do for the active hold of this exercise, I do anywhere between 4 to 6 minutes. And if I really feel the effect and I'm already starting to feel something in my left kind of lower leg, I try and hold it for maybe a couple of more minutes. You're not actively squeezing this block. You're not trying to murder the cushion or the block. You are simply trying to hold the cushion or a block if you don't have a cushion and prevent it from falling down between your thighs. Okay, so the compression, if you like, of the cushion is very light. And then you've got your arms out in this sort of 45-degree position, palms facing up, back of the fingernails pushing down into the ground, and you're simply breathing. in through the nose. Exhaling gently through pursed lips. Making a note that your ankles and your knees are in the same plane. So your ankles aren't going to be lower. They're going to be completely in the same sort of plane as your knees. You can see that. And also, you're going to make sure that your feet aren't sort of turning out like a duck. Really pay attention to the feet being parallel. You're just holding the cushion, maybe about up to 5% of a sort of compression there with the inside of your knees. Arms out 45 degrees, palms up. Fingernails gently pressing down into the ground. Head and neck are relaxed. And almost instantaneously, my left shoulder starts to quiver. And I can feel this immense sort of action, burning, activation, a real sort of loud call from the lower part of my left leg. This is flexion abdominals position. Amazing to help you reset your pelvis, re-educate the hip flexors, the major movers of the body, and to help you release and reposition the trunk, which is anywhere from your spine, your shoulders, your neck, and the top of the head. This exercise is called flexion abdominal pullovers. And for this exercise, you're going to need a box, you're going to need a thin cushion or a foam pad. And the goal of this exercise is really to realign a wonky pelvis and shoulders that basically are equally compromised, compensating, or dysfunctional. And by doing this exercise with the position of your feet to the wall in the manner that you're going to have them, you're going to be instigating a reaction from your feet to the wall to then stabilize your pelvis that then recorrects a wonky rib cage, a twisted rib cage, shoulders that are misaligned, etc., etc. So we're going to lie down. This is my imaginary wall. We're going to lie down on our back with a foam pad or cushion, thin cushion underneath our skull, with our feet to the wall. And you're going to be really sort of focused on setting this up really well with your knees generously bent over the line of your rib cage. So you can see here my legs are not in a 90-degree position, they're actually a little bit more acute. My feet are hip distance and my ankles are in line with my knees. My knees come over the line of my rib cage. This is your flexion abdominal position. So for pullovers, what we're going to add is the use of our arms. So we're going to interlace the hands in what we call a universal fist, with the palms really stuck nicely together, no gaps in the palms. Your elbows are really nicely locked out. And from here, we're going to release the abdominals, release the rib cage. You're going to inhale with the arms pushing forwards towards the knees. As you exhale, you lift the arms up towards the ceiling, ribcage stay neutral. Exhale, bring the arms just either side of your ears. Now, as the arms come here, two things may happen. Your palms may separate, your elbows may start to bend. If this starts to happen, try not to go so low with the arms and really only go as far as you can with the palms together and the elbows locked out. Inhale the arms back towards the knees. Exhaling, reach. Inhale forwards, exhale, reach. And the other thing that we're not trying to do is literally create an archway in the back or lift our rib cage up to the ceiling. If you find that happens, that's a compensatory sort of pattern and you're not able to lift the shoulder blades up towards the ears. So really focus on feeling like somebody's standing behind you and pulling the arms towards the front of the room. Inhaling back, exhaling left. And we're going to do 3 sets of 10 for your flexion abdominal position pullovers. It's a great exercise to do if, for instance, you've been sitting for long periods in a day, you want a warm-up before you go out to play a particular sport or do yoga. This is a really well-rounded full body exercise that will really help you reposition the full body in just a matter of minutes. This is flexion abdominal position pullovers. This exercise is called static wall with block. You're going to need the use of a wall, you're going to need your block and a foam pad, a cushion or a block underneath your head. And what you're going to do is you're going to lie with your legs up to the wall and with your bottom about a foot away from the wall. So your bottom isn't necessarily sort of touching the wall. And you're just going to come and lie down on your back in this position. So my bottom is about a foot to half a foot away from the wall. That's also to encourage the extension of your knees. I've got a foam pad just underneath my head. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to place a block lengthways. You can see here I'm sort of compressing the two long edges of the block between my ankle bones and my big toes, like so. And then what I'm going to do is, with my arms in a 45-degree position, my fingers are wide, I'm going to spread the toes and I'm going to compress that block as I bring the feet into flexion. Flexion means you're drawing the toes towards you and you want to sort of feel like you've got a tray sort of on the soles of your feet. You're not bending your knees and you're trying really hard to stay with the compression of the block for the entire duration of this exercise. And you're just going to breathe. So you should feel a great amount of work happening in your quads, your thighs, certainly the lower legs towards the ankles, your shins, and the sort of soles of your feet. Head and neck are relaxed, and you're just breathing here. That is your static wall with a block. This exercise is called wall goddess, and essentially what you're doing is you are creating a goddess pose but using the wall. Okay, so you're going to need a wall. This is my imaginary wall. And this is a foam pad that you're going to use under the base of your skull. This exercise is designed to encourage really good external rotation of your hip, but also as we release all the muscles that may be compensating, you will therefore also encourage internal rotation of your hips. You'll also really sort of know how limited you are in your feet and how much that causes your limitations in your hips and vice versa. So you will also be working largely your lower legs as well. So for your wall goddess, you're going to come and lie down on your back on the floor. Leave about, I'd say about a foot to maybe a foot and a half of space just between your bum and the wall. And then what you're going to do is you're going to bring yourself in a squat, sort of wall squat, a goddess squat, sorry, against the wall. Now what you're trying to do is you are trying to turn your feet completely sort of outwards in a lateral position. So you're not letting the feet stay sort of in a 45-degree position. You really want your toes pointing out to the right and to the left. And then keep your knees in line with your ankles and your knees in line with your hips, okay? So you're not having the heels close together. You want to create a sort of, I'm going to say a 90-degree position between your ankles and your knees, but obviously it dips down into a 45-degree position from the knees down into your hips. And then with this sort of foam pad, make sure there's no obstruction behind the neck. Arms are going to be in a 45-degree position here, and you are simply holding. Gentle compression of your feet to the wall, and you're trying to relax all the muscles in the inner thighs as you just hold your wall goddess. Breathing in through the belly, exhaling gently through the mouth. Inhaling here, and exhale. And release. And you can hold that for I'm going to say up to 5 minutes, longer if it feels good, or shorten it if you're really struggling to hold that position. This exercise is called static wall splits. And what you're doing, this is my imaginary wall again. What you're going to be doing for this exercise is basically trying to do a lateral split against the wall. But you're not going to be touching your bum to the wall. You're going to be about a foot away. And the whole purpose of this exercise is to really help you sort of undo any compensations in the inner thighs, the adductors, which tend to sort of take the work out of any kind of function of the lateral leg, which means your legs kind of compensate instead of the hips doing the work. The other thing that this exercise does really do is help you realign a wonky pelvis while you keep a sort of neutral spine, a neutral shoulder position. So lots happening in this exercise, and you're only holding it for about a minute or two, maximum 2. I don't think a lot of people can hold more than that. I prefer to go about 3 or 4 minutes personally, because this exercise really does help me externally rotate my hips, which is very limited given that I've got bunions, flat feet, and heavily sort of inwardly rotated femurs. So you're going to need a wall and a foam pad under your skull without it obstructing the back of your neck. And like I said, just imagine this is my wall in front of me. What you're doing with your bum about sort of foot away, maybe a little bit closer if you've got pretty good mobility. And then what you're going to do is literally just split the legs. And what you're doing here, my legs kind of just go a little bit more towards the block here, but that's simply because I haven't got a wall. But what you're trying to do here is really flex the feet, really engage the quads, and open the legs as wide as you can out to the lateral side. Arms are out in a 45-degree position here. And the funny thing about this exercise, or the most interesting thing for me, is if I look at the height of my left leg and my right, for me, it's never the same. I can always feel like my right leg's a bit higher than my left, and that just goes to show what's happening in my pelvis on the right side and the left side is totally different. Hence, I have different ranges of motion in both my hips and in different sides of my body. Flexing the feet here, arms out, 45-degree position, and you're holding this for up to 2 minutes, longer if you can. This is your static wall splits. This exercise is called wall frog. It's one of the many variations of frog that you can do. And for me personally, it's one of my favorite variations, simply because it doesn't just work the inner thighs, but it also gets me into my hips, my lower legs, and therefore helps me open up my shoulders and release any tension I may have in my neck. For wall frog, you're going to need a wall. You're going to also need a cushion or a foam pad for underneath your head. And this setup here is simply to demonstrate to you what a wall would basically look like, or for me to be able to use a wall for the purposes of demoing the video from a side on. Okay, so what you're going to do for this exercise is you're going to come lie down on your back. And the number one sort of setup anomaly, I'm not going to call it a mistake, I'm going to call it an anomaly that I see, is people kind of put their bottom too close to the wall. And in doing so, what that will instantly sort of promote is the sort of rib flare, the popping of the ribs, and this massive gap in the lower back. So the first thing you're going to be aware of, and you're going to have to maneuver based on your ability to externally rotate the hips, which is basically take your knees wide, but also the ability of your feet and your ankles, is you're going to have to judge how far away from the wall you can be. So for me here, I can get a little bit closer. You can see here I'm maybe just about a foot away from the wall in front of me. And what you're going to do for wall frog is, to the best of your ability, you're going to bring both of your feet together and try and Velcro each of your 10 toes together, the toe mounds and the heels together. The exercise is actually largely, 99% of it is driven by squeezing your feet together, by pressing the soles of the feet together. And most of us When we put our feet in this position, we find it extremely difficult to let go of all the tension in our inner thighs. So what this exercise is actually helping us do is use our feet, restore function in the ankles and in the lower legs to allow us to relax the abdominals as well as relax the inner thighs and our hips to promote an external rotation in our hips, which will help us reposition our pelvis. And we're going to hold here for the duration of the exercise. But if you, like me, want to make this a little bit more intense and a little bit more lower body driven, you simply take your feet higher than the line of your knees, which is what I'm going to ask most of you to do to start with, because simply by bringing the feet lower, what you'll find is that your feet separate and you put the compromise in the rib cage by being sort of arched in the lower back. So bring the feet high. Squeeze the soles of the feet together, allow the hips and the knees to drop out. Palms are open, arms 45 degrees. Relaxing every single muscle in the body except the soles of the feet. And what you'll find is for the first minute, the sort of battle is between the inner thighs, the hips, and the soles of the feet. But after a while, as you breathe, you start to sort of put the function into the lower legs, the ankles, the feet, and allow the hips to just drop out. This is called wall frog. This exercise is called hook lying knee pillow hold. And hook lying means you're going to be lying on your back, knees bent, feet parallel, with your back on the floor. And for your knee pillow hold, all you're doing is you're going to need a cushion, and you're just simply trying to hold the cushion right between your knees. And what this exercise is designed to do in a really gentle, passive way is release any kind of dysfunctions in your hips, in your pelvis. So if you have like a wonky pelvis, back pain, you know, anything that you're compensating within your pelvic and your hip area, your sort of leg and your thigh area, that'll start to unfold. It will help you activate your feet and therefore help you recover from any foot-related dysfunctions and pain you're experiencing. And with you lying on your back with your arms 45 degrees, we're passively restoring rib cage and shoulder position as well. It's one of my favorite exercises, and I use it a lot, especially at the moment during pregnancy. But also if I've been on my feet, for instance, you know, walking a lot, playing a lot of paddle, this exercise, even just for sort of 10 minutes, can really help me feel restored in my whole body. And I'm hoping it will do the same for you. So we're going to start in this hook line position, on your back, knees bent, feet hip distance. Make sure your feet are parallel, not turned out, not turned in, but also your feet are not too close to the back of the thighs or too far away. Really find that nice neutral spot where your sacrum feels really neutral underneath you. Grab your cushion, and for the hold of your cushion, this is really important, we're not squeezing actively, okay? We are just holding it with enough sort of pressure, if you like, to just keep it right between the knees, but enough to sort of save it from falling down between your thighs. So if I walked past you in this exercise and I pulled the cushion, I should be able to just yank it away with very little ease. And then your arms are coming 45 degrees, fingers wide, back of the nail beds into the ground with a cushion or a foam pad underneath your skull. Make sure the cushion or the foam pad isn't touching your nape of the neck. The neck is free. So it's really sort of flat surface of the skull on top of the cushion or the foam pad. And then for your hook lying knee pillow hold, you're just relaxing here. With the fingers wide, you're feeling all of the nail beds into the ground, and breathe. Feeling each of the toes down into the ground, from the big toes, the pinky toes, and the center of the heels, with a gentle pressure of your feet to the ground. You're just trying to release any tension there may be between the knees and in the pillow squeeze. And what will happen in this exercise over a period of time, you may start to feel some quivering, some shaking, and this is very natural. It's also a very good reaction, which will tell you that muscles are starting to release. And once they start releasing, they're able to receive stimulus to be able to start being reconfigured. So don't try and stop any shakes. Just keep your whole body relaxed, your abdominals relaxed, and your shoulders relaxed. And just focus on your breathing here. This is your hook lying knee pillow hold.